Yeah, not exactly in the way the contracts rolled out, but I do think the Rockets getting Van Vliet, Dillon Brooks, and Jeff Green as three new contributors to that young stable of like rising stars. I think that they struck the right balance with the type of guys they added to that team. Championship experience basically across the board. Dillon Brooks, was on the all defensive team last year. We know about all the shenanigans. I mean, I don't love his shooting. I think he's like 140th, at least last year in 3-point percentage. Hopefully, he can turn that around for himself. Get buckets more consistently because he looked pretty awful in the postseason. But I think the way that he, you know, I guess maybe commands respect on the defensive side. He brings that edge. He brings that tenacity. I hope he's not a distraction for those young kids. I hope he has gained some sort of maturity after having a really ugly exit from Memphis. But I think there are some redeeming qualities for him. And yeah, I mean, Van Vliet kind of taking over at the one. I think that's going to be really like really big for them in terms of how the ship gets steered. And then Jeff Green, I think, is just a good rotation piece overall, just to have a veteran in the locker room. He cost 1 year $6 million. I mean, that's basically for free to get a guy like that into your locker room. Denver, I think, really messed up there just to bring him back for 1 year at that amount. But it'll be interesting. The one thing I kind of look at and take away from this whole situation, I consider the Rockets winners in this sense. But I do want to kind of see how this whole thing plays out, because you're taking a severe amount of looks away when you bring in a guy like Van Vliet from Amen Thompson, from Kevin Porter. Dillon Brooks will obviously take up minutes at the three positions. So what happens to Cam Whitmore or Tari Eason, et cetera. We'll just have to see, but I think they have a good problem on their hands.
Yeah, I agree. It's like the one downside, but at the same time, I think it's like the NBA has evolved, right? Where it certainly is a lot more about positionless basketball. It's about ball movement. So, Amen Thompson, not the best shooter. So it could be interesting to see if, Sengun is like the next Jokic, right? Everybody's talking about. Having players that kind of move around him, I think certainly makes sense. And it is nice to have a player like of Fred VanVleet who doesn't need the ball in his hand to necessarily be a contributor, like, solid in terms of, I guess, getting steals on the defensive end, can shoot, catch and shoot. I think he's a great solid pickup for them. And, I think we've talked about it in our last episode about him. Oh, yeah, he could possibly be a good fit in there for like a short, 3-year deal, which I think is what he gets signed for here. So great, I think, signing in terms of that. And then great on Fred VanVleet. Like, this guy was undrafted, right? Like, G League and everything, and is a champion already with the Raptors. So and I think he made an all-star team, I believe too. So I mean, good on him. I think right now this is as good of a situation as he can be. I feel like better than where he was with Toronto, at least in my opinion. With Toronto, he was kind of like a fringe all-star team type, or not all-star team, but fringe like playoff team. But then now with the Rockets, like ultra talented team, a lot of upside. You got a solid coach with Udoka right there as well. And then, can be someone I think Amen Thompson can learn from. And Amen Thompson's 6'7". So, we could potentially see this lineup, right, where we have like Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, maybe Porter as well, and then like a Jabari Smith, right, and then Sengun. So I feel like that is like a stacked team right there. There's a lot of potential, I think, that they can do with Amen Thompson. I think that's where they felt that with getting Fred VanVleet, I don't think he's necessarily going to hurt them, especially, again, with Sengun being that kind of like ball handling center as well. So, I think this will be an exciting next couple of years for the Rockets.
Yeah, I think they'll be definitely one of the most fun teams to watch on TNT, ESPN, like wherever they're airing. I could see them potentially getting into like the play-in tournament as soon as this year, just with kind of their free agent additions. Yeah, Dillon Brooks even said like this team reminds him a lot of Memphis when they were first coming up. You had like Jalen Green is playing Ja Morant, and then Jabari Smith is kind of like your Jaren Jackson in a lot of ways. So he sees a lot of those qualities in both squads. So I mean, if that's the case, no, I just think they'll have a lot to go on this year, and yeah, it should be a lot of fun. So I'll plan to tune in when I see them on the books for one of those kind of games.
Yeah, yeah. One more thing I think on Dylan Brooks, right? It's like I think when I was watching some of the games when he was with the Grizzlies, especially this past season, he was like trying to be a playmaker, and I feel like that's not what he ought to be doing. Like he's not necessarily the quickest, most athletic type of player there at the wing position. So I feel like you ought to be a little bit more 3-and-D, a little bit more 3-and-D there. Like I saw his shooting percentages last year; they're pretty bad. The years before they weren't as bad, right? I think just last year just did not play that well in terms of his offensive output. So because I felt like he was just trying to be a little bit too much of a playmaker. So with having taking a step back, sitting on the wing a little bit more, I feel like this is a good position for him to be at, even more than I would say Memphis there. So good on Brooks getting paid, and I think being in a better position where he's set up for success a little bit more.
Yeah, it was really weird that he kind of seemed to be like the go-to shooting option against the Lakers in that series. I was kind of, it's like, man, can they just find somebody else to step up and take that role? And it felt like he was kind of hitting the bench at some points because some of the shots he was putting up were ridiculous, and they didn't really feel like a typical Grizzlies style of play. I mean, I can't remember if they were down Bane or Jaren Jackson. They might have been out Jaren Jackson for that series or the playoffs last year or something. But yeah, something was off at that mix. But he definitely shouldn't be a second, third option on any sort of playoff team. I mean, you bring the defense, but otherwise, like, yeah, I don't want to see him, trying to shoot like 10 3-pointers in a game or something.
Exactly. He's not. He's a 3-and-D. I think that he's a 3-and-D. He's a highly paid 3-and-D now, but yeah, I think he's a little better set for like a 3-and-D role. So.